young teenage boy named Todd Bowden, Brad Renfro, finds out that his neighbor is in fact an old Nazi war criminal, Ian McKellen, who just wants to be left alone. He uses this information as well as other evidence to blackmail him into telling him stories from the war and from the concentration camps. Eventually, this tale turns into a story of manipulation, skewed personality, and if evil truly ever dies. 11 years after Alan Bridges' attempt at an adaptation, which actually resulted in a movie where 40 minutes was shot, Bryan Singer takes the reins in an intriguing, albeit somewhat clunky narrative. Sir Ian McKellen does do a terrific job as Arthur Denker slash Kurt Dusander. He plays this guy almost like this sympathetic character to this messed up kid. But as the film goes on, the tables turn and he becomes the manipulator, and we come to realize that Todd brought out something in him that makes him like his former self. McKellen isn't a fan of the role, as he stated really wasn't deep enough to make it intriguing, and views Dusander as just a personification of evil. But I disagree. There's a certain strangeness to him that I like. He's at first sympathetic because you have this teen who's taking advantage of this poor guy, but then once he starts revealing the stories of the Holocaust, he realizes what he is and embraces it. Plus, seeing him manipulate Todd the same way Todd manipulated him was intriguing. The late Brad Renfro as Todd was certainly creepy, but again, similar to Dusander, he did have a certain sympathetic nature to him with the hallucinations and dreams. However, both characterizations are really interesting as they are evil but in their own ways. The relationship between them is really the soul of the movie. The story around them is fine but nothing super interesting. None of the characters are really noteworthy, with maybe the exception of Edward French, the guidance counselor, but he only comes in somewhere in the middle and at the end, but is still a semi-interesting side character. The first half of the movie does have a somewhat flowing narrative, but still feels choppy, with the second half being really choppy. I feel like Singer didn't really know what to do with the story outside of the odd relationship of Bowden and Dusander. Can they carry a movie, though? I would think so. For the performances of the two, I would say that it's worth at least one watch. The original novella is definitely much darker and much more violent, and has more of a descent into madness for Todd, rather than the surface level relationship between him and Dusander, as well as his somewhat broken psyche. It's definitely like night and day, and the original story sounds much more interesting and much more disturbing than what Singer showed. It's kind of similar to the film and book versions of American Psycho. The film is very neutered in terms of violence and not as fucked up as the book is, but it's still a magnificent film, unlike Apt Pupil, which is just fine. Singer very much described the film as a stage play, and it felt very much like it. But with that, the story felt kind of tedious at points as it didn't explore a lot of settings and never went extravagant in terms of that story. But as I stated, it's definitely worth watching at least once.